If you've been waiting forever for the next book or film in a series to come out, there's something you should know. Because all my life I've been watching people wait 10 or 15 or 20 years for the next thing in a series to arrive. And then when that thing does finally arrive, they say, it's not the same. Not even to say that it's bad, it just feels different. It has a different voice. It almost seems like it was written by someone else. Here's what you need to know. It was. For example, this right here is one of the most highly anticipated books in the history of books. Fans have now been waiting 14 years for the next book in the Game of Thrones series by George R.R. Martin. And I'm telling you that when it arrives, it will not be what you expected. To be clear, I am not saying that it's going to be bad. I'm not saying that George R.R. Martin has gotten too old or that he has lost it. I'm saying you are not the same person you were 14 years ago, and neither is he. And of course, every creator ages and matures, and their sensibilities change, their life experiences have changed. And if you're following all of their stuff through the years, you kind of go on that journey with them. But when you have a series and then a decades-long gap in between editions of that series, the difference in the tone and the feel of the work can be shocking. And you ask yourself, what happened to this guy? But the answer is always just time. And I didn't really understand this myself until I went through it. Because while my second book had been published just a few years after my first, it had been written almost a decade later. And people would ask me in interviews like, well, the tone is so different. Why did you change the tone? And I had no idea what they were talking about. And when I read it, it reads exactly the same, but the reality is there's a big difference between somebody at 25 and at 35. And this doesn't always have to be a bad thing. Remember, The Fellowship of the Ring was a really late sequel to The Hobbit. 17 years passed between the two. And I get asked if I would ever go back and revise my old books to update the language or whatever. And the reality is that I couldn't do that even if I wanted to. The guy who wrote those books is gone. And it's the same for the person you were 15 or 20 years ago.